I cut ties with my ex after realizing I was never truly desired. Months of turmoil revealed her deep emotional issues and dishonesty. I am starting the process of severing ties with my ex. To begin, our relationship was founded on very shaky ground, considering it had only been 3 months since she ended her previous relationship, during which she had cheated. Then, just 3 weeks into our relationship, and after about 4 or 5 dates, she became intimate with her ex. That was painful, but I remained confident in our bond and chose to let it go. She expressed regret immediately after, stating she felt hollow, yet during our in-person conversation about it, she remarked, "It was really good," in a way that felt quite the opposite of disappointing. At one point, she told me, "I don't know if I am ready for a relationship," claiming she was fearful of causing me pain, but I was direct about my feelings, and thus, we ended up together. All of these issues might have been overlooked if other fundamental aspects of our relationship had been stable, but they were anything but. Throughout our time together, I never felt particularly desired by her, as our sexual encounters seemed to revolve almost entirely around satisfying her, leaving little room for genuine intimacy, resulting in us having sex very rarely. I reasonably suspected that her interactions with her ex did not mirror this lack of desire, though I cannot confirm that. It is clear how the previous instability influenced our dynamic. Therefore, it is safe to say that from the outset, there was no security in our relationship regarding something as basic as attraction, much less in other areas. All I ever wanted was to feel wanted and desired an absolutely normal expectation in any romantic relationship. Can you comprehend what it feels like to go through life believing, "I am too unattractive for anyone," and for your initial relationship to provide the most significant evidence supporting that belief? I would spend countless months convincing myself, "Sure, that makes sense." I was foolish to think my girlfriend would actually desire me. Ultimately, all I wanted was to feel desired, a perfectly healthy yearning within a relationship. There is far too much emotional baggage involved, and I cannot forgive her, despite my attempts. With the idealized view of her gradually dissipating over the months, I have come to recognize several characteristics I find unappealing. These traits prevent me from moving forward, and I have largely kept these thoughts to myself, having focused primarily on our sexual and attraction-related issues. She displays considerable dishonesty, and it seems she is completely unaware of it. She has previously taken pride in her skill at deception. While it may often be subtle, engaging with her reveals just how dishonest she can be. This trait is one I deeply despise, and when combined with the issues in our intimate life and her peculiar reluctance to openly share our relationship status with her family, along with her odd defensiveness, when questioned about it, creates an unfavorable impression. Additionally, she shows a lack of accountability. Our relationship was riddled with her erupting at me randomly or giving me the silent treatment for no apparent reason. Her closest friend informed me that this was part of her personality, repeatedly telling me that I had done nothing wrong and that she's just having a moment. My own friends would be baffled by the way she treated me. Nevertheless, my ex is convinced that it all stemmed from something I did. Even in her attempts to present herself as balanced and fair, her statements were still framed in a way that suggested her behavior was a response to mine. That's simply not accurate. A significant portion of her outbursts lacked any clear provocation or stemmed from incredibly trivial matters. For instance, she almost ruined a deeply meaningful day for me, presumably over me accidentally stepping on her foot. When we visited Niagara Falls during the eclipse last year, she gave me the silent treatment and spoiled what should have been a joyful experience for us, all over something that amounted to nothing. Her best friend reassured me that I had not done anything wrong in that situation. She is so focused on creating narratives about herself that you can literally observe her fabricating excuses on the spot to avoid feeling guilty about her actions. She often boasts about her blunt nature, but the only time she exhibits this trait is when she is being unnecessarily inflammatory. Otherwise, she lacks courage in her communication. Throughout our relationship, she consistently refused to engage in meaningful dialogue. She would vent her frustrations to my friends, who would invariably advise her to discuss it with me because they knew I would be attentive and open to resolving the issue. Yet, she ultimately never did. It is evident that she attempts to convince herself of a version of reality that suits her. When we discussed infidelity, she would express her confusion over why people cheated, all while ignoring the fact that she had cheated herself, and not long before I entered the picture. Not to mention, she only seemed to feel regret for her cheating after we became an official couple, an indication of insincerity on her part. Her excuse was that she had been intoxicated, completely oblivious to the fact that she was admitting to cheating purely for her own enjoyment. I initially overlooked this because I understood she was still figuring things out and that her previous partner had treated her poorly, although I made it clear that I believed she was immature for her actions. I did not hold back just because I had feelings for her. However, I don't believe she truly learned from this experience. She continuously claims to be not superficial and different from other women, yet through casual conversations, she reveals hints of a superficial viewpoint, making her an obvious red flag someone parents would caution their sons about growing up. To be honest, my intuition suggests that beneath it all, she possesses a good heart. I am seldom mistaken about this in my experience. Nevertheless, she is, at best, a chaotic individual. Our relationship was unnecessarily tumultuous due to her emotional difficulties, her form of narcissism characterized by a fragile ego and unstable self-image, as well as her overall lack of maturity in several critical areas of her relationship. The experience was honestly traumatizing, complicating my already challenging life and causing significant disruption. I lost sight of myself while trying to put forth my best effort despite the constant difficulties, ultimately draining my spirit. I am attempting to regroup, learn how to navigate adulthood, and build a life for myself. I care for her a great deal, but I simply do not wish to be around someone with whom I have so much irreconcilable baggage. Someone who behaves like a mental child, traits that would definitely draw Freud's attention, and where our connection amounts to my attempts to engage met with silence or minimal responses. As I reflect, I realize I should never have been in a position where my close friends and her own best friend would observe how she treated me and think, what on earth? What should be simple, easy, and enjoyable aspects of a relationship should not have become complicated just 2 to 3 weeks after we began dating. I genuinely believe this was due to her lacking attraction towards me. Maintaining a connection shouldn't be this challenging. Trying to decipher what goes on in her mind when, realistically, she probably doesn't even know herself, considering she struggles with basic decisions about eating without turning it into a problem for everyone else, leading to emotional outbursts over her hunger, reveals a clear pattern. Her behavior embodies the definition of, if she wanted to, she would. And her lack of involvement in sustaining our connection communicates a strong message. The most forgiving interpretation of her actions is that she is an emotionally immature and unstable young woman with narcissistic tendencies, unprepared to engage in a relationship following a relatively fresh breakup with her previous partner, and is currently uncertain about her desires, as echoed by her best friend, my friends, and close family, and that the sexual dynamics that made me feel unwanted stemmed from that confusion. So, what truly am I gaining from this, aside from turmoil? This Valentine's Day is particularly painful in the wake of everything. I am utterly convinced that I am unattractive and that my physical attributes would lead to rejection, 4.5 inches in length, 5.2 inches in girth. I don't believe there is a single person who finds me appealing. I do not receive any likes on dating applications, and whenever I socialize, even on the rare occasions there are no individuals attracted to me, though I confess my social efforts are rather half-hearted. My sole romantic experience has left me with overwhelming evidence reinforcing the belief that I am unattractive or that I am physically inadequate, even though she asserts otherwise regarding both these points. Those remain the only explanations that resonate with me as to why she did not desire me. I cannot shake the feeling that I will never find anyone else, which is why I hesitate to let go. I recognize she is not good for me. I understand that any chances for a romantic connection between us are likely extinguished. I know I cannot continue as just her friend, for I cannot bear the sight of her with others, and I am fairly certain she is actively seeking out new relationships. I realize what I must do. I only wish I could find someone else. Story 2. After a roller coaster of drama, my ex chose K over me, But the final twist: he accused me of being the toxic one before blocking me. Am I the asshole for forcing my former boyfriend to choose between leaving me or severing ties with his female best friend, whom he has known for merely 1 month longer than me? This is quite a lengthy story, so please be patient. I, a 17-year-old male, met my ex-boyfriend, also 17, when we were both 14. Having recently changed schools, I believed we hit it off exceptionally well. A few hours into our acquaintance, my ex, whom I will refer to as S, introduced me to one of his friends, K, a 17-year-old female. From their demeanor, it seemed they had enjoyed a long-standing friendship, but it later became apparent that they had only been acquainted for a month before I came into the picture. This detail is significant later on. After approximately 2 months, S and I began developing feelings for each other, which naturally led us to start dating. This arrangement was satisfactory for a time until the school year concluded for summer break. During this time, S and K began hanging out without informing me and posted pictures of their outings. Being not a jealous person, I chose to overlook it. However, as S started responding to my texts less promptly, I eventually felt it was best to end our romantic relationship but remain friends. S agreed, and we continued our friendship until we were both 16. In early 2024, I began to sense that S still had feelings for me, which reignited my own feelings for him. Throughout our friendship, our social circle had expanded, so when I began to feel these emotions again, I confided in our mutual friends Max, 17, Tia, 17, and Kaitlyn, 17. We collectively agreed that it would be constructive for S and me to discuss our feelings openly. K was initially part of these discussions, but our relationship had been deteriorating for some time, so I chose not to engage her in further conversations. After S and I expressed our feelings to one another, we decided to officially resume our relationship on March 7, 2024. The first week of our renewed relationship was wonderful. We spent quality time together and communicated more frequently. This positive atmosphere shifted one day in March when K saw me embracing S and inquired about it. Confused, I responded in a neutral tone, "Am I not permitted to hug my own boyfriend?" Her expression changed dramatically. K turned to S and accused him, saying, "You promised me you would inform me if anything occurred between the two of you before it actually happened." This unexpected confrontation took me by surprise, but S maintained his composure and merely shrugged. Unhappy with this, K proceeded to shove S off his chair while we were in class. S was seated, facing away from me, while I was standing behind him hugging him. I quickly caught S to prevent him from hitting his head on the nearby table, which ignited my anger and led me to exclaim loudly, "What on earth was that for? He could have injured himself." K ignored this and withdrew from the group for the remainder of the day. The following day, S and K resumed their usual interactions, which prompted me to ask S about the previous incident. He showed me an apology message from K expressing that she was merely shocked by what had transpired. Though I was slightly amused, I chose to let it slide. However, the next few weeks turned into a nightmare. Every morning before school, K would rush over to embrace him for an excessive amount of time. She would disregard me to converse with him, and at lunch, she would barge in to seize the only available seat near him, despite other options being open at our group's table. I discussed my concerns with S on numerous occasions, but he brushed it off as K simply being herself. I felt increasingly disheartened, but then the final straw came. During lunch one day, S informed me that he and K were planning to have alone time. The following Tuesday words from him, not me. He showed me the messages where K requested this, alone time, which were something like, "K, hey S, I was hoping we could have some alone time because since you and OP got together, we haven't seen each other very often." S, okay, sure. K, yay, I'll come to your place, I am so excited. This revelation understandably angered me. On that Tuesday, I decided to visit my friend Max's house and consequently messaged Kaitlyn's boyfriend to inform him about Kaitlyn's plans, which triggered a fight between them and ultimately caused a rift between K and me. However, I didn't mind this since I had never particularly cared for K. Weeks later, S and I organized a sleepover, but he mentioned K and she invited herself. While I was asleep, I felt movement and turned over to discover K spooning S in my own bed. That moment pushed me over the edge, and I broke down in tears, unsure how to respond, so I confided in my friends. As the weeks passed, K's behavior continued to be relentless. On one occasion, S had several hickeys on his neck from me, and a teacher jokingly inquired, "Who did that?" in reference to me and K. That was when I reached my limit. During break time, I questioned some of K's other friends about whether anything had ever happened between K and S. As I did this, I asked S and K to allow me to have a private conversation with these individuals, resulting in S believing I was avoiding him, and he left to another room in tears. Eventually, everything was revealed, and S assured me through his sobs that nothing had occurred or would transpire between him and K, that he loved me and would never betray my trust. I accepted this and moved forward. Several weeks later, after completing my final exams, I left school. With prom approaching, S and I began discussing our outfits, agreeing on matching blue suits. He informed K, who then thought it would be clever to buy a blue dress to pair with us. This would not have bothered me if she hadn't already purchased a yellow dress for prom. She merely wished to replicate our look. We switched our color choice to black, and wouldn't you know it, she then acquired a black dress as well. We reverted to blue while hoping she wouldn't catch on, but she quickly realized we were planning to go as a matching duo in black and blue, causing her to wear black. Finally fed up, I sat S down to discuss how K was negatively influencing my mental well-being and asserted that I would cease all communication with K now that we had left school. S finally recognized that K had been encroaching too closely and chose to cut ties with her. Importantly, I want to emphasize that I did not, under any circumstances, demand S to cease all communication with K. He made that decision independently. For a time, life was wonderful. S and I were stronger than ever, and I even accompanied him and his family on a vacation to another country. Then, the college experience began. One day, S casually informed me that he and K had engaged in a makeout session before we became a couple. Though I was understandably upset over his deceit, since it occurred prior to our relationship, I chose not to end things. I assumed that was the conclusion of this drama until a few weeks later when he ignored my messages for an entire night. When I inquired about it, he explained that he befriended someone on the bus ride home and had spent the evening with them. I honestly didn't mind and was glad he had made a friend. However, a few days later, he messaged me, tearfully confessing that he had lied and was once again friends with K. During the time he had been ignoring my messages, he was actually spending time with her and felt too guilty to respond. At that point, I issued him an ultimatum he had to choose between K and me because I refused to endure another cycle of lies and secrecy. He chose me. S distanced himself from K, and I believed everything was resolved. This changed on Christmas Eve when I fell ill and was on the couch with my mother. Suddenly, I received a notification that S was typing. He typically takes no longer than 2 minutes to compose a message, so when he took 5 minutes, I sensed it wasn't positive. He then sent me a long message accusing me of being toxic, manipulative, abusive, and resorting to all manner of insults. Just as I was about to respond, he blocked me. To clarify a few pressing questions: 1. He identifies as pansexual, which is why I was wary of his potential to cheat. 2. K has a history of infidelity. Her boyfriend during this narrative was cheated on by her. 3. This account does not cover every detail, but I intended to keep the story focused and concise. I should mention a few additional points. S claimed I was isolating him from his friends, which is untrue. I requested that he not spend time alone with Max, who was mentioned earlier, because Max had confessed to liking both S and me simultaneously, making me uncomfortable with their interactions. Also, I suggested that S refrain from inviting anyone else over when I was present so we could enjoy our time alone. That was my only request. Furthermore, he imposed similar restrictions on me. He urged me not to be alone with our mutual friend Tia, despite my being a gay man and Tia being a lesbian. I find it ironic that he could express frustration about my boundaries while setting rules against me spending time with a lesbian. Story 3. I ask her out. We share a perfect evening with kisses, but she claims she doesn't feel it. I'm left reeling and confused. This is my first time sharing my thoughts, and it's a lengthy one. I apologize for the lengthy discourse, but I prefer not to omit any details. On her initial day, I spent some time assisting her in setting up her work equipment. I am in information technology, and she appeared to be quite nice. Throughout the following weeks, we conversed about music, movies, and various peculiarities. We soon discovered that we were the same kind of quirky and developed a strong connection. Now, I must clarify that I have a tendency to develop crushes. I cannot recall a time where I had a female friend and didn't contemplate asking her out at some point. I become quite sentimental, and there's no real remedy for it. Usually, those feelings either fade quickly or I make a move and face rejection. It may seem bleak, but I have grown accustomed to it, so while it stings for a few days, I quickly move on. As our work's Christmas party approaches, I find myself completely smitten. We agree to travel together since I live close to a train station. Upon arrival, she looks stunning. I could not have been happier in that moment. We enjoy an enjoyable evening with our colleagues and take the train back home. 5 or 6 months later, I finally decide to pop the question. I suggest that we go out again, just the two of us. She agrees, which is fantastic. In the following days, we plan to meet at a cozy little Italian restaurant nearby, which is family-owned. Before our meeting, she shares her concerns regarding my expectations for the evening. I strive to be completely honest, indicating that I have no expectations. I am genuinely just excited about going out for dinner, which can only be labeled a date. As we arrive at the restaurant, within the first 10 minutes, she informs me that she doesn't believe anything romantic will develop between us. She doesn't feel that connection. Great, this is a familiar situation, as we have been here before. I express my disappointment honestly, but I understand her feelings. We have dinner. I share amusing stories from my misadventurous teenage years, and we return home, concluding that in my mind we remain friends, no issue here. Sometime in January, I decide to go suit shopping. I wear one for work, and I think this is a perfect excuse for us to hang out. She agrees, and we go one Saturday. We shop around, pop into various stores, engage in conversation, the usual routine. We opt for lunch around 2 p.m. and spend 4 hours chatting in a cafe. It was a delightful day, one that I will cherish for a long time. After this, we start talking on the phone, regularly chatting for 3 to 4 hours about a myriad of topics. We also go out for coffee, and it's similarly enjoyable. The bond is developing. We text each other constantly, share music, and vent about colleagues. At this stage, we are essentially best friends. I have confided in her that I am quite enamored with her at this point. I am comfortable discussing my feelings. One of my friends has previously said that I love openly, which is accurate. I have never attempted to pressure her about it. I fully understand that she does not share those feelings, which isn't a problem for me, as long as I am allowed to express myself and not bottle it up. She has found my honesty peculiar but not uncomfortable, appreciating knowing where we stand. On a couple of occasions, we have held hands, but it has not been mentioned, and it hasn't caused any issues. On the eve of my 30th birthday, a Sunday, she asks if she can call that evening to deliver my gift, as it is an awkward size. I agree and convince her to enjoy a movie night at my place, complete with a film and some inexpensive takeout food. Essentially, it's a house date, although not a formal date, as she has expressed disinterest in dating. She agrees to arrive around 5:30 p.m. She arrives and presents me with a framed poster of Jacques Brel, the renowned Belgian songwriter. This is likely the finest gift I have received this year. It's wonderful, and she is probably the only individual who would have thought to give it to me. We select a movie and sink into the sofa. After approximately 20 minutes, I invite her for a cuddle. At this moment, I am simply testing the waters to see how far I can go. She does not question it, turns her back toward me, and I wrap my arm around her. We engage in conversation throughout the movie, laughing and guessing. We finish the first film, and she glances at the time, suggests watching a second film. I am in no hurry for her to leave, so I certainly agree. About 3/4 of the way through the second film, she gradually shifts from my shoulder and is now resting on my stomach. I have stretched my legs over the coffee table to accommodate this, and she has adjusted her position so that she is no longer paying attention to the movie. My hand rests on her waist, and she gently strokes my forearm with her fingers. It's a perfect moment, one of those that one could frame and hold forever. Then, she kisses me. I feel the need to reiterate, she kisses me. It's an exquisite kiss, perfectly sweet. At this stage, I am incredulous at how this occurred. There are a few more kisses throughout the evening and then she departs. How did I achieve this? How has this unfolded? When will I wake up from this dream? These thrilling questions linger for the next day. Monday and Tuesday pass, and I even receive another kiss on Monday as she is leaving the office, away from prying eyes. We joke about not officially dating, and she gets flustered, playfully telling me to hush through her giggles. All seems good. On Tuesday night, she mentions that she is uncertain about our situation, so I casually ask if she would consider dating me. It's merely a half-hearted question, just a way to affirm that someone indeed asked. She tells me she is unsure and is still trying to sort through her feelings. This is unexpected yet not a concern. I am the one who got kissed, and she can label it however she likes until she decides to recognize it. Wednesday arrives, and she comes over again for more movies and, ideally, more kissing if I play my cards right. We start the movie, she snuggles into my arm once again. Everything feels great. We order food, and when it arrives, I bring up the previous night's events. I apologize for pressuring her for an answer, emphasizing that I've always maintained that we don't need labels, and so forth. This sparks a discussion about her lingering uncertainty about her feelings, confessing that she kissed me in hopes of finding clarity but did not. In her view, she would know by now if there was real chemistry, and since she doesn't, she interprets this as a sign that it is not meant to be. I am heartbroken. I had spent the past few days in bliss, which has now come crashing down. I was naive to think she shared at least some of my feelings, but now she is indicating otherwise. We finish watching the movie while I cling to her desperately. I realize this may likely be our last shared moment, so I want to make the most of it. Thursday, I am a wreck. Just to clarify, I deal with depression, and I am not equipped to handle any of this. I sob in the men's restroom while listening to French love songs, barely managing to keep myself together in the common office area. Through discussions with colleagues, I learned that she was also upset. She felt terrible about the situation, leading to both of us being in distress but apart. I managed to avoid speaking to her that day, trying not to look in her direction for fear that it would provoke further emotional outbursts. Upon returning home, I prepare to weep myself to sleep. As I flip through my music, I discover a song titled Kitchen Door by Wolf Larson. It's slow and mellow, and I suspect it will trigger my emotions. However, as I listen, I experience a significant realization. I shouldn't feel sorrow. She is simply making foolish choices. We had exchanged a few texts that morning in which she explained some of her thoughts. One point was that I loved her more than she loved me. I understand this can be problematic in a relationship. However, this is typically an issue for the person who is more invested in the relationship, not the fortunate individual receiving the affection. Furthermore, she mentioned feeling awkward around me on Monday and Tuesday. Now, I don't know about you, but whenever I kiss someone, I feel a bit strange around them for a few days afterward. Now, here I am, feeling a mix of manic energy after the tears I shed earlier that day. She is simply making unwise decisions. Surely she will come to realize that my profound feelings for her are not so terrible and that the awkwardness will dissipate quickly, and we can return to where we were. Nevertheless, the mania didn't sustain, and by the end of Friday, I was once again crying myself to sleep. So here I remain, still deeply in love with someone who either A, has no interest in me, or B, does not recognize that she might. What course of action should I take from this point? I cannot articulate how much I cherish her, how well we connect, and how much I yearn for this to flourish, yet it may just not be feasible. I welcome all your unhelpful advice. Should I cling to hope, or should I attempt to lessen our contact until it stops hurting so profoundly? Currently, I am still an emotional mess, so I am open to various suggestions. In short, I have feelings for her. She states that she does not share those feelings, yet she kissed me regardless. Is this situation salvageable? Story 4. Management ignored anti-slip warnings, winter hit, slips skyrocketed, a child injured, and suddenly they found the budget for safety. Edit for TLDR. The events transpired in the latter half of 2022 in the United Kingdom. Names and company details have been altered or omitted due to a non-disclosure agreement and overzealousness on the part of the company. Part 1. The issue begins. During this period, I was employed at a prominent tourist destination, receiving thousands of visitors daily. A portion of our attraction was outdoors, and we had expanded this area to introduce new features. To blend with the theme of the new section, a brand new brick pavement was laid down in that region. At that time, upper management had a habit of not fully considering the implications of their decisions, and this instance was no exception. The key decision was to omit the installation of an anti-slip surface on the brick pavement. It was summer, specifically a dry one, but we were aware that wet weather, including rain and snow, was a typical occurrence in the colder months. The absence of an anti-slip surface was crucial. We communicated this to upper management, but as was customary, our concerns were ignored. Winter arrived sooner than expected, bringing with it all the precipitation that the summer had lacked, resulting in a harsh winter for the United Kingdom in 2022. Temperatures dropped to single digits, eventually reaching negative values in Celsius. The cold resulted in a consistent layer of frost over the brick pavement, leading us to engage in what could be described as malicious compliance. Part 2: The compliance. The first instances of slips and falls prompted a realization. The company mandated the documentation of every incident on paper accident and incident reports whenever an adverse event occurred. Those of us who worked in tourist attractions are familiar with children falling due to excitement, and we usually conduct a quick assessment for injuries before disregarding the incident if no blood or serious harm is visible. Nobody enjoys dealing with paperwork, especially considering that we were required to take the long route to the office to fill out forms, which also meant finding someone to cover for us while we did so. Upper management resented our presence in their exclusive offices, preferring we remain with paying customers. It is important to note that our lower and middle managers were supportive of our actions because they recognized the absurdity of upper management's decisions. Observing our efforts, they consented to what we were doing. Consequently, every single slip that occurred outside on the makeshift ice rink formed by the brick pavement was reported. This resulted in about 15 to 20 minutes of being indoors, avoiding the cold, while describing how someone else had slipped in the same way as the last 10 incidents clearly visible to upper management. I like to think that their increased work from home hours correlated with our presence in the office. One of our lower managers, a good friend of mine, revealed that the stack of reports submitted to upper management was several inches thick. I take pride in being one of the top 3 contributors to that collection. Part 3: The bare minimum response. Eventually, upper management started to take action to resolve the situation. They opted to cordon off the majority of the brick pavement with unattractive temporary barriers and laid down anti-slip mats to create a path for the sections of the attraction designated for visitor access. They believed they had successfully addressed the issue, while we knew otherwise. Anyone familiar with tourists knows they often disregard instructions. When told not to touch valuable items, they will invariably do so. When asked to keep their children close and prevent them from wandering, it is astonishing how quickly children can get lost. For instance, our record for no lost children was just 4 hours. The barriers that were meant to restrict access were routinely ignored. Every time we instructed individuals not to cross beneath these barriers, they displayed a look of surprise. The barriers were positioned just low enough that children would duck underneath and immediately run onto the slick surface, resulting in more slips. As a direct consequence, we filled out even more accident and incident reports, while upper management merely instructed those of us earning just above the minimum wage to do a better job of monitoring that area of the attraction. Part 4: Wake-up call. School groups. We dreaded them, particularly the teenage ones. Conversely, younger children aged 5–10 were a joy to have around. This was largely because their teachers took responsibility for the students and adhered to our guidelines, fostering a sense of safety for the little ones, which we genuinely appreciated. Our shared sense of anxiety peaked when news broke that a 7-year-old boy had slipped and fallen on the ice, likely while playing with his classmates and not paying attention to his surroundings. Unfortunately, he ended up chipping his 2 front teeth, necessitating assistance from our on-site first aid team due to the blood. Thankfully, he seemed fine aside from the fact that the tooth fairy would likely be paying him double that evening. However, for our lower and middle management, this incident was the final straw. I regret not capturing a photo of that accident and incident report for posterity, given the number of signatures accompanying it. Part 5, The Fallout. Nobody desires a lawsuit, and the child's parents had substantial grounds to pursue one. The injury caused by negligence reflected poorly on upper management, and they could not simply brush the incident aside. Everyone had been warning them about the risks, and I can only speculate about the conversations that transpired with the higher-ups. Remarkably, within 2 days of the incident involving the child's teeth, they installed an anti-slip surface on the brick pavement, likely at a greater expense than if they had done so during the summer. The barriers were taken down, and the frequency of accident and incident reports plummeted. They also finally implemented tablet devices that allowed us to complete reports without leaving our posts. Our working conditions improved, upper management received an earful, and that child likely has an amusing story to share in the future. While I wish I could say that upper management learned from this experience and would heed our advice in future projects, expecting that from them is akin to anticipating a dog not to relieve itself on the carpet after its first reprimand. I no longer work there for other reasons, and many colleagues who participated in the act of malicious compliance have since moved on as well. However, for nearly 3 remarkable months, our department functioned more cohesively than ever before. TLDR management neglected to properly prepare a pavement for winter and disliked being advised to do so. After months of submitting regular accident and incident reports and a child losing his 2 front teeth, they finally found the funding to treat the pavement.